I want to thank everyone for joining the USM Alumni Association this evening for the Expert Advice Roundtable. We're really excited to offer this to you guys. We have a wonderful group of parents of alumni and faculty members who are joining us this evening to hear from a wonderful panel of alums who are taking time out of their very busy schedules to speak with everybody. As we all are, either in a remote work setting or in the office. So a really quick, a few little items. If you don't know me, my name is Leah Wabashewski, and I will be moderating the event this evening. And a couple notes, I'd like to encourage you to submit any questions you might have, either for the panel as a whole or for an individual panelist through the chat feature. We'd be happy to address those, or if there's a specific topic that you would like for us to cover throughout the evening, that would be wonderful. I'll address the questions as they come in and allow the discussion to really kind of move organically. That's kind of our intent to, discuss the topics and let the conversation go from there. So I'd like to welcome and thank our alumni panelists for hosting this discussion this evening. I'm very proud to introduce to you guys Marie Sussy from the class of '97. She's the managing director for Varde Partners in the United States for Human Resources. Demetrius Patterson from the class of '92. He is an IT director for Coca-Cola North America. George Bauman from the class of '04. He is the president and CEO of Great Lakes Rubber. And Raj Bala from the class of '80. And amongst Raj's many professional positions, he is a senior partner at Denton's US, which is the world's largest international law firm. So big welcome and thank you to our panelists. Excited to get started this evening. And we'll start off with kind of a general topic and question that really applies to, I think, everyone's career in industry. And, that's how the COVID-19 pandemic is impacting hiring demands globally and industries for that. So I'm going to present that topic in question to our panelists and let them take it from there.
So I can start off. So as Leah mentioned, I work at Coca-Cola Company. I've been there for 25 years now, and I can tell you a little bit about how COVID has kind of impacted us and the current situation at Coca-Cola right now. We're currently pretty much almost everyone at Coke is working remotely. Our offices are closed until at least next year. We don't even have a target for reopening the office, which is a pretty big deal since we have a big, beautiful campus with thousands of employees. And we've been closed since March. And just to tell you a little bit about how it's impacted our business and our hiring demands and things of that nature, our revenue kind of comes from 50% retail, 50% food service. So we get half of our revenue through selling through grocery stores, gas stations, things like that, where our things that are sold in our bottles and cans. And then our other half is at restaurants and sporting events and things like that through food service. And so as you can imagine, the food service part of the business has just gone way down. Our retail is up for people that are stocking up on our beverages at home, but not enough to make up for everything we've lost in the food service. So in March, once everyone kind of coinciding with everyone moving and working remotely, we were impacted pretty dramatically as far as our contractors. So our first priority was to protect all of the employees at Coke. And so we pretty much had to let go almost every contractor immediately. We had to cut a bunch of contracts short. I had to get rid of contractors on my team pretty much by the end of March, which was pretty almost devastating in some areas. And with the team that I had left, being in IT support, we pretty much had to go into a support only mode of kind of just keeping the lights on for probably about 3 or 4 months. But after I'd say 4 to 5 months. We actually, I think what happened is a lot of my business partners started looking at what budget they had for the remainder of the year, and they were so unsure of what the budget was going to be next year because they think everything's going to get cut so dramatically next year that they really want to spend up all their money this year. And we've actually started rehiring a lot of the contractors, and I currently have double the contractors on my team that I had back in March as we try to finish up a bunch of initiatives before the end of the year. So it's kind of gone up and down like that. And the last thing I'll say on kind of where we are with hiring before I pass to the other panelists is you may have heard in the news, because it's made pretty big news, that we are having a major reorganization at Coca-Cola. And we recently had a voluntary separation program where people were offered packages where they could voluntarily leave as we go through this reorg. So that was a pretty big deal. It was, I think the reorganization itself was planned anyway before COVID hit, but COVID has just kind of accelerated it. And through that, I think about at least 700 employees, including my manager, have taken the voluntary package and are leaving basically in about a month in mid-November. So that's going on. And then as the reorg, we kind of announced the top levels of the reorg, and we're slowly announcing the levels as they go down. And there are potential for some involuntary separations to happen as that goes down. So everyone's kind of on pins and needles and worried about that. In my 25 years at Coke, we've had so many of these reorgs. It's not, we see it a lot. So it happens. It feels a little different now because of COVID and all the uncertainty. But that's kind of where we are. So not a lot of hiring going on right now at Coke, but from what I've seen, whenever we have one of these major reorganizations and lots of layoffs, about 6 months afterwards, we start back rehiring because we realize we don't have enough people. So I'd expect maybe mid next year to start hiring again.
Great. Well, I'm happy to go next. Hi, everyone. Marie Sussy. I live in Minneapolis and I work at an investment firm. And, you know, same with Demetrius and Coke, about March, all of our employees on a global basis. We have offices in London, Singapore, New York, Tokyo, Mumbai, really all over. We sent all of our employees home. You know, I think we have a benefit in this environment that we don't actually produce any physical products. We don't make anything. We make investment decisions, and we invest money on behalf of our clients. And so going remote was very easy. Everyone had, the laptop to just take home, and we were able to provide, monitors and stuff, printers and things like that for people at home. So I would say my industry probably less impacted by the need to be out of a physical office. And when you're working in a global firm, you're already doing calls with people at 9 o'clock at night, and, it's 6 o'clock in the morning for them, or you're traveling. And so we were used to operating apart from each other. So that's been pretty seamless. Although, hard. Certainly we miss our colleagues, but the work has continued to be done very efficiently. And we didn't really slow down our hiring either. I would say the hiring challenge that I faced was trying to get our hiring managers to be open to actually making an offer to someone they never met in person. And that was very challenging for people. It's a pretty traditional industry in a lot of ways. And so to get more comfortable with the virtual interactions and how, we could still figure out that people were the right fit for us. It took a little nudging, but I think we got there, and we really didn't slow down our growth. But it's certainly very, it's cautious hiring, right? We kept with our growth plans, but we made sure we didn't get out ahead of them because so much is just uncertain right now. So I would say it's been stable, but cautious.
Raj, would you like to follow up, or George?
You may need some help getting off mute.
Okay, great. Yes, I'm Raj Bala. Thank you so much to Leah and to my colleagues on the panel. I should start by giving a big thanks to University School. I mean, I don't think I'd even be here on the panel if it were for the great teaching at University School that led me to 3 great jobs, which I'm blessed to have. One is in university teaching, one is in legal practice and one is in journalism. And I would say at the outset that regardless of the ups and downs of the economy and hiring and incomes, the liberal arts training that everyone receives at university school, the excellence in writing and in quantitative skills, those are always in demand. They are enduring in terms of their importance. First, with respect to, let me say with respect to everything I'm about to say, I'm pretty optimistic, but I think we have to think in a very nuanced way. Really think through what are the causes, because a lot of what's happened is indirectly caused by the pandemic, but it was sort of a carryover from the global financial crisis, or it was just a result of long-term trends. So let me explain each. First, with respect to university teaching, for those of you who are interested in being a professor, I happen to be a professor of law at the University of Kansas. I think that's a very noble aspiration. And in fact, my goal in life was to teach at university school. I just got sidetracked with law school. But the reality is that tenured professors are heavy fixed costs. And so the number of tenured positions in the American academy has really dropped to about 30%. And it's even as low as 25% in some places. And so when older professors retire, if they ever do, then what happens is they're replaced by adjuncts who are much cheaper. Now that has nothing to do with COVID. That was a long-term trend that was probably accelerated by the global financial crisis, and then has been further accelerated by COVID. Currently, there is no hiring going on in most parts of at least the legal world, that is the law school world, unless it's for nuanced positions like legal writing, or the career services office, or the admissions office, or maybe the media relations office. But it's pretty rare to see openings for lateral, professors. That's on the university teaching side. With respect to legal practice, and of course we're all online. We're all on Zoom classes, which I'm sure you're familiar with. With respect to legal practice, as Leah mentioned, I'm a senior advisor. She gave me a promotion to partner. Thank you. But I'm a senior advisor at Denton's, and that, Marie's firm is a very large firm. We're in like 76 countries. Even there, while hiring slowed down, still there is some hiring going on. For example, we've just opened an office in Tanzania, and we are looking for lawyers with certain skill sets. For example, export controls and trade sanctions. I'm sure everyone knows about the Sino-American trade war, the ongoing conflict with Iran. Well, that's a very big area of practice. Likewise, Demetrius's area in information technology, data privacy, fantastic area of legal practice to go into. Healthcare law, elderly law, excellent areas to go into. So it sort of depends on the area of practice. Litigation, that may have slowed a bit, just simply because the volume of cases and having to process them with COVID, the courts are kind of overwhelmed. But I would encourage everyone who's thinking about law school and then legal practice. That's fantastic. In terms of journalism, I've been fortunate, again, thanks to those great writing skills in university school, to be a columnist at Bloomberg based in Mumbai. I do a monthly column. And sort of like what Marie and Demetrius were saying, Bloomberg was this fantastic studio in the India Bulls Center in Mumbai, one of the big financial towers in Mumbai. Well, with COVID, and in fact, Prime Minister Modi gave all 1.3 billion Indians 4 hours to go home and lock down. The studio's closed. So thanks to like Demetrius's colleagues in Mumbai, they just set up these studios at home. So Bloomberg runs an entire television and electronic journalism network from the professionals' offices which are now home offices in their apartments in Mumbai. And they still do their best to produce, quality journalism. And I would suggest that the hunger for quality journalism, as opposed to good investigative journalism and unbiased journalism, as opposed to what my editors in Mumbai call sort of tribalism, where people are kind of, segregating themselves to certain news media to just get confirmation of their biases. I would say that hunger is stronger. Traders on the Bombay Stock Exchange or on Wall Street, they still need good financial journalism. So if you're interested in journalism and by extension, corporate communications and government media relations, I think more power to you. That's it. Those are great areas to think about.
Thanks, Raj. George, do you want to follow up for anything for, being a business owner in your industry as well?
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm George Bowen, President and CEO of Great Lakes Rubber. I think I'll provide a nice different perspective here. So we do not have the global reach that everyone else on this call does. And I think that's really unique in this circumstance for how we've responded to COVID from the beginning all the way through to where we are now. So I think our industry as well has forced our hand with some of the things that we are able and unable to do. So when COVID first hit in that mid to late March time, we reacted very similar to everyone else here on this call and did our best to work everyone as we could from home. So as a distributor, quasi manufacturer, there are certain positions that are unable to work remotely. So we had to figure out how to handle those positions. And we started with shifts where we were trying to reduce the exposure of people. But we put everyone from home, and that was really unique from us because we were a work from the office culture. So we had never really experienced, maybe 3 people had laptops in our entire organization, knew how to work from home. Everyone was working from the office on a daily basis. It was what you would consider that generic 9 to 5, go to the office, go home type culture. So what was kind of the underlying uniqueness of COVID for us is that it forced our hand to become something that we ultimately wanted to become anyways. So we pushed everyone to home as best as we could and provided them with all the, the materials and equipment that they needed. And it went pretty poorly for us early on. And, not only did everything that, COVID caused in terms of recessions and economic trends affect us negatively, but then productivity dropped a lot for us as well. So it was really interesting to learn how to deal with that. It caused us to have to reconsider how we looked at things like metrics and KPIs and how we just judged performance and how we exposed ourselves to what people were doing on a daily basis so as not to micromanage, but to just know what was going on. And I think those were really unique things for us looking back in hindsight. It really helped us with our business and will really help us going forward. But in about August or so, or July, when, I wouldn't say COVID got itself under control, but as we've started to learn more about this and where we can be safe and where we have to, take some risk. For us, we brought people back completely to the office in August. And so all of our employees work in some capacity from the office or in the warehouse. We have around 40, 45 employees across 2 locations. One of the nice things that we were doing in this time frame was we were also renovating our entire office space in our main location. So with the renovation, we plan for growth, and that really allows us to bring everyone back as well because there's a lot more space than there was before, and so it doesn't feel as enclosed or as close quartered as it would have in the past. And we're taking a bunch of safety precautions when it comes to temperature checks and mask wearing and really just sanitizing the office and communal sanitizing, as well as having deep cleanings multiple times a week. So we're doing our best, and I'm happy to say that we haven't had any spread of it or any of that. So it's exciting to see that what we're doing and putting in place has allowed our people to become more productive again or return to productivity levels that we saw pre-COVID. And that's also meant that our business has started to grow again. And I think part of that's just the economy changing and the manufacturing world starting to pick up as it figures out what a, I don't know if it's new normal or what normal looks like now during COVID. But it's also meant that we've needed to hire as well. So it's interesting. We have 4 panelists here across a variety of different industries, and most of us are talking about how we're continuing to hire. How all that was affected was just that first maybe 3-4 months of that pandemic, when that uncertainty was at its peak, and people were either not hiring for new positions or offloading what they thought they need to. But for us, we kind of stayed as steady as we could, and then now we've just been expanding from here. So I have never hired more people than I have in the last 7 months in my entire career. And I think that's pretty fantastic. I don't know if that's true of our entire industry, but it may be just a little bit unique to our business itself. But I think it speaks volume to hear from what everyone else is saying about the hiring process, that I don't think that COVID has really affected that in the way that we thought it would. And I think that's actually really exciting to hear as well. So that's my perspective.
So what does this look like, for each of you? It really sounds like, there's been fluctuations. I mean, Ford, you just said you've never hired more people in your entire career than you have in the past 7 months. And Demetrius, you shared that there's been restructuring. So for, each of your industries, and, Raj, you're kind of across several different industries. What do you think this current environment and the conditions that you're all experiencing, how does that speak to the future of work for your industries, or specifically, what people entering the workforce are, have to look forward to, not necessarily whether that's a positive or a negative thing, but as they enter the workforce, what is the future of that looking like for you guys?
Yeah, I can start with this one. I think for us, the thing that this has changed from a future look is that for us, it was a work from home, or work from the office to a work from home culture. And I think global organizations have done or it's a little bit, I wouldn't say easier, but have more practice at hiring globally and figuring out what that looks like, how Zoom calls work, how interacting across multitude of locations work. And for industries that are stagnant, say in the manufacturing or mature, for lack of a better term, I think it's really forcing their hands. And I think even those most adverse to working from home cultures will continue to push towards work from home. I think that was inevitable anyways because of the change in technology, but something like COVID has forced that hand even more. And I don't think that that's going to slow down. And I'm seeing it even in my industry, and that was definitely a work from the office culture, and it's been that way since the beginning.
I think it's exciting too for job seekers because I think the universe has opened up, right? So if you're sort of wedded to a particular location because of family or roots or a spouse or a partner, whatever it might be, you could live in a place like Milwaukee, but your job could actually be with a firm in New York or London or wherever it might be. And so I think for the job seeker, it's really exciting because I think the world has opened up. I think for the employer, it's also really exciting because the talent pool has just gotten 10 times as big because you can now think about hiring people in a variety of locations. And for us, and I think I can speak really for the broader financial services industry, there's a pretty strong commitment that there'll be some sort of hybrid approach moving forward. So trying to figure out how you take the best of being in the office, which is, the collaborative time, the innovation time, the innovative time, the coming together for the things that bring us together, mixing it with the best of being, remote, which people have found more time in their day. People have found time to exercise, eat dinner with their kids. Like there have been some wins of being remote. Maybe you have more heads down time for strategic thinking and really trying to make it be that 1 + 1 = 3 in this sort of hybrid world moving forward. And I think that's where you'll see financial services go for sure. And that's certainly where my organization is going to go. And people are excited about it. They're energized by it. There's something, I'm wearing sweatpants and slippers right now. There's something kind of nice about, being home sometimes. And there's something really nice about being in the office with your colleagues and figuring out how to create that hybrid is pretty exciting for all the talent on the job seeker or the employer side.
Yeah, I was going to make a similar point to Maria. It's kind of a good news, bad things for good news, bad news situation for job seekers, because to the point you made, you can kind of choose to live where you want and still maybe look for your dream job that may be in a completely different city. So that's kind of like the good news for the possibilities. But the bad news is the competition is a lot broader. You're competing with folks across the nation or across the world for something that might traditionally have been only local people in that city. But I think a lot of managers, in particular old school managers who may have just always thought, I really need to have you in the office, they've seen it's now been proven over the last 6 months that you can still be productive remotely. And so I think that's kind of changed the minds of a lot of managers that are going to be more open to those remote positions in the future. And to what George was saying earlier about that was like kind of the culture you were hoping to move towards with your company anyway. I've heard that over and over about COVID accelerating a lot of technologies and tools and things and culture that companies wanted to do. So at Coca-Cola, our digital workplace team had actually just recently, before COVID, rolled out a bunch of new tools like Microsoft Teams. Microsoft also has a tool called Yammer for corporate communications and things like that. We had just rolled out, and they were working on all their adoption strategies to get more and more people to use it. And COVID just forced everyone to have to use all that stuff right away. So everyone's kind of competency in that got up, and it helped us accelerate a lot of things with that. So I think it is going to be a hybrid model even post-COVID after we reopen the offices.
Yeah, I would agree with what everyone has said. I think in university teaching, it's always been custom and practice to be on campus on your teaching days, and then a large number of professors would do their research on their non-teaching days in their home offices. Now, of course, the difficulty is we miss our students. We want to be there with them on campus those 2 or 3 days a week. And so we look forward maybe in the next academic year to be able to get back on campus. I think, though, we're going to continue to see a sizable percentage of online classes. And right now, the barriers, interestingly, of course, are not technological. In law schools, the barrier is really the American Bar Association, because it has been willing to certify only a limited number of classes online. Now, it's waived those regulations during COVID, but I wouldn't be surprised if later on down the road, when the pandemic is over, but the virus is sort of endemic in populations, they may increase the number of credit hours you can get in law school from online, which would mean you'll still see, 10%, 20% of courses in law school offered online, and the professors then will still be there in their homes. In legal practice, I think it, again, depends. It's sort of nuanced. If you were where I was at the Federal Reserve in New York, you had to be in the office because you were often going out and looking at banks and examining banks and talking with banking lawyers. And I'm not even sure how that's done now. It may be partly remote, but you kind of got to be in certain practices in the office. And generally across different specialties of law, lawyers and clients like to meet. They like to see face-to-face, just like what Marie was saying earlier about it's different to hire someone you've never met in person. Well, same thing, hiring your lawyer you've never met in person. On journalism, I think they're sort of like the academy. We've seen journalists be out and about. There's a nice buzz when you're in the newsroom, and the journalists like to be in that newsroom, but they're also very comfortable writing their stories from home. Let me just mention a couple of other points. So one is one of the benefits, I think, of some of this work from home movement that George has been talking about is that you don't have the commuting times that you used to have. I mean, I would watch people in New York doing, 90-minute, 2-hour commutes each way. And that's time when you cannot exercise in the morning or in the evening, and you cannot be with your family. And now you can, as Marie and Demetrius were saying. And I think that raises another vital point, is that the struggle to maintain good physical and mental health, on the one hand, is harder because we're not able to get together and sort of be together physically. But on the other hand, the time is opened up to take care of our physical and mental health. The other thing I would say, just in wrapping this up, is it goes back to what Demetrius was saying about being able to look for talent globally, and then what Marie was saying, you get to live in really great places like Milwaukee. And that's really true. And I would just throw in something that has nothing to do with COVID, but it has to do with climate change. Demographically, most people now are going to live into their 90s or 100, Americans, and they are going to have multiple careers. And I think when you start thinking about where you might want to live, one of the great places generally, depends a little bit on the map, but is being in the Midwest. And I'm even seeing people in Miami, San Francisco, New York saying, how can I get a position that would be based in, say, Kansas City, and eventually move my family there, partly as a hedge against climate change.
A couple of interesting things that you guys all touched on that I want to explore with you guys a little bit is this embracing technology theme that I'm hearing. So like when we start putting people from home, or companies are forced to push people remotely, like the way that we become more productive is by having a culture of embracing technology. And I think that sometimes is a given rather than, is taken for granted, I should say, rather than a given amongst all these companies. So one thing for us is it's definitely changed a priority, or a shift from the past 5, 10, 15 years of the way that we've approached things. And I think that's huge for the success of any organization moving forward, is they have to have that in one of their key priorities, is how do you embrace technology to make people more productive, especially if we're going to move to working from home and all the benefits that we're talking about from that. But it also breeds to like how people can get ahead too. So, we're here for talking about how to help others, find careers or find their path or move forward or move on. And I think, having that similar mindset, I can see it from people in their 60s to people in their 20s. Age doesn't really matter on this one. It's the people that are willing to embrace the things that the companies are asking them to do, or that are going outside of their comfort zone to push their talents and abilities. Those are the people, even more so than ever, that are getting ahead. Those are the companies that are getting ahead. Those are the individuals that are getting ahead. Those are the individuals that are getting employment, or transferring jobs or getting promotions. And, I can see that even in my limited space and just my network. So I'm also interested just to hear from you guys, how you guys are seeing that play out as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that wholeheartedly. It's kind of, the smartphone revolution kind of created I think it helped all industries so much in making, you never had to read the instructions on how to use your iPhone. It was just intuitive and easy to use. And so like you mentioned how a lot of your workers at your company, only a few even had laptops, but they all had probably smartphones. So if you can create these work tools that are as easy to use as the applications on your smartphone, then they're going to get adopted more quickly. It's not going to be like, oh, I got to get online to do this. It's just a natural part of what you do. And I think we've, in the IT industry, we've taken that approach and learned from, I think, a lot of the practices of companies like Apple to try to make all the applications as user-friendly and intuitive to use as possible. And that's helped with the adoption. And as we've gotten to this situation now where everyone has to embrace it, it's made it that much easier. The fact that our Yammer tool is just like using Facebook or social media. It's all we kind of take our cues from that to help things get adopted. And I think as you're looking in careers, a lot of it, especially what I tell a lot of the people coming fresh out of college, or even going a few years back when social media was really just starting to emerge and the younger generation coming out of college were just experts on social media as opposed to people that had been in the workforce for a while. I would always tell them to have confidence going into their interviews about what they could bring to the company that may be behind on trying and reading through social media and things to that effect, that they are coming in as just experts without even knowing it, regardless of what they majored in college, and using that to their advantage to kind of leverage, you know, how they can, what value they can bring to a company in that realm as well.
I think that's really great point. Sorry, Marie, we had a really wonderful question come in from an alumnus. So what would you guys say to a college student in his third year who is now considering the thought of postponing his 2021 spring semester and entering the workforce? What is the upside and downside to this thought with regard to future job opportunities?
Well, that's hard to answer without the ability to ask a lot of questions around the motivation there. I don't know if any of my fellow panelists have thoughts, but I have a million questions back to this person, trying to understand the motivation. I think my advice would be figure out if long-term having that degree is important, and figure out if you step aside from it, are you actually going to go back to it? Because I think that there are a lot of times your career takes you in a million different directions, and mine's taken me in several different places. I never thought I would live in Minneapolis. I'd never even been here before I got this job opportunity. But I think figuring out what's important and trying to make sure that you can knock those off would be something to think about. So if ultimately having that degree is important, my advice would be keep plugging away and get it done, because you never know where you're going to end up, and it may be hard to go back again.
Yeah, I'd say short term, it's not a bad idea just to get that experience, and that's always going to help, you know, at some point. But when I have an open position, a lot of times one of the base requirements is that bachelor's degree, and in particular, it might be being in IT, it might be in a particular field of computer science or CIS or something to that effect. And so you have to think of it that way, that, you know, no matter what your opportunity is in the short term, 5-10 years from now, if you're going to be seeking another opportunity, that bachelor's degree might be that minimum level of entry to even get considered. So I would consider that. And to Marie's point, it's just easier to knock it out, you know, while you're already in school, as opposed to trying to go back later.
And what about, we had another question come in. This is from Christina. As someone who is considering leaving her current job during the pandemic, I have a certain level of guilt with abandoning the team at a tough time since business has suffered. Do you have any tips about leaving your job at this time? And have any of you lost valuable team members during COVID, and what has that been like?
Again, one of those questions where you have like 4 or 5 questions back. But, you know, I think one of the things to think about when looking to leave employment is why you're looking to leave. Is it because the company's not offering you what you ultimately think that you can get? You know, one thing I would look inwards and say, have I asked the right questions to my management team or my employers? Are they even open to listening to what I have to say? You know, if they don't know from an employer standpoint, it's hard for us to be mind readers about what the future looks like for that individual. Now, to be fair, that's on management and on employers to figure that out as well, and to be asking those questions. But you know, that's where I would suggest starting. And if the answer is that I'm looking to leave to better myself, well, at the end of the day, you only have one life to live. So go find what's best for you. You know, don't leave on bad terms. If you're really worried about leaving that company and what it might do, offer to stay longer than 2 weeks. New employers are going to be generally okay with the fact that you're trying to leave your company or your current space in a good place. They respect that because it shows the type of person and type of employee that you're going to be. But I wouldn't not leave a current position because afraid of what it might do for that company specifically.
And I would say I've seen time and time again people reluctant to make a change because they worry they're going to leave their existing team, in a lurch, or how that's good. And it rarely ever happens. I mean, people are resilient. They step up. If somebody leaves, they fill in the gaps. It's an opportunity for maybe someone else to move into that role. It could be a promotion for someone, or an opportunity for someone who doesn't have a job to be employed. And I think, ultimately teams fill gaps pretty well. Even though there would be some guilt about leaving. And I agree with George. I mean, like, you got to do what's best for you. I mean, I work in human resources, so you wouldn't expect me to say this, but, ultimately it's a business relationship between you and your employer, right? And you have an equal say in how that relationship goes, and doing what's best for you. And sometimes people, I think they worry too much about the exit, and really the exit always generally goes a lot better than people expect.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, I can think of a person on my team that my initial reaction would be devastating to lose him at this time. But I'm always an optimistic person. Whenever someone does leave unexpectedly, I always try to look at it as an opportunity. So I'm just going to find someone to backfill that person. That experience I had with that person, I'm going to take everything I loved about that person and then everything I needed to improve on with that person and look for the next candidate that's going to be even better. So that's kind of the way I approach it, to fill gaps like that, because it happens. It's turnover. In some industries, turnover is greater than others, but no matter where you are, it's going to happen. Everyone's not going to always stay in that same position forever, depending on opportunities. So I wouldn't hesitate if you're leaving for the right reasons, if you've explored what the opportunities could be where you are, and if you actually have another opportunity that you're moving towards, I wouldn't hesitate.
Well, and I just read some statistics today. Actually, there were as many people who left their jobs in September as there were from March through the end of August, just this year in the United States. Like, this pandemic has created situations for people that they just need to maybe make different choices. And, with kids maybe not being in school and distance learning, and, people have had to make choices they didn't think they would have to make.
I think that's, really great feedback. And we had from the previous question, I believe from the person who asked about considering postponing their spring semester. They referenced Zoom fatigue, and that may be, I'm not sure if their classes are taking place virtually, so maybe they're looking for something to supplement, if everything's taking place virtually, then maybe they would like some hands-on experience in the profession or industry that they're pursuing. So assuming that that's this individual's circumstances and why they're considering postponing their spring semester, what would you say, to that thought? All of my classes are taking place virtually. Is it more valuable to postpone my, continuing on with my degree and getting hands-on experience? Or would should I consider some non-degree professional enhancement programs to supplement that? Would that make someone stand out more in the workforce as they're entering, an industry, hoping to stand out amongst the crowd of virtual applicants?
You might have Zoom fatigue, and depending on what job you go into, we have to deal with Zoom fatigue anyway.
Yeah.
So but I can't imagine like taking all classes on Zoom, so it may be a little different.
I would say stick with it and finish out the degree. I think you have to take the view that the long game, that it's a long life and a long career. Every person I know, and that's very anecdotal and not a scientific sample, who did what you're suggesting pre-pandemic. They, in their third or fourth year of college, got an internship, and then they left and they said they'll go back. They didn't go back, and they regretted it in their 40s or 50s. And it did hurt their career advancement and their income growth. And I don't see the world moving in a direction where human capital, brain power, as signaled to people who do recruiting like Marie by a degree. I don't see that's changing. I think if anything, given the kinds of professions we all represent, the level of training is manifest by, at least as Dimitri was saying, an entry-level degree is really important. I understand Zoom fatigue because I'm teaching, I'm doing it online. But do remember, if you think through exactly what's going to happen, you're going to finish this semester, and then you're going to have a nice long holiday, Christmas and New Year's. And then you can try and schedule your Zoom courses. So maybe you're not doing, 5 or 6 hours straight, or you get a day or two break. And May is going to come pretty quickly. And I think also, and I'll share with you this anecdote from a very good friend of mine, who's the chief fundraiser at a major university on the East Coast. And she said she actually likes to hire people who've not necessarily taken this gap because it shows resilience, that they were able to adjust and adapt to the technologies, exactly what George was saying. And they proved resilient. So I would say do your best and stay with it.
I think what Raj touched on there is the point that I was going to make, is that at the end of the day, a bachelor's degree is more about a signal to an employer that you can finish something and complete a task, for lack of a better term. And not finishing that is a huge red flag to a lot of people. Now there's an idea that we could get internships and do classes on that side, but it sounds like from what everyone else is saying on here that it's less likely that someone's going to finish that degree when they start getting those internships or start getting that. So I agree with Raj wholeheartedly. Resilience is the biggest thing that we learn from college, how to manage time, how to, interact with others in an environment we're not comfortable with. And those things are invaluable, regardless if we're doing it on Zoom or and maybe some ways even more so now that we're doing it on Zoom.
And I would just say, maybe there's specific, industries that don't, look at the college degree as important, or there may be certifications in, technology around coding or something that help you get the job. But I always sort of felt like you had the rest of your life where you had to work. And even now, sometimes I'm like, do I have to do this for another 25 years? Like it is a long career. And so I kind of wish I could go back to school sometimes, so I would say don't rush it too. Like you have a long time to work, and I wouldn't be in a super big rush to get out into the workforce because there's, most people have, at least 40 years of it.
The only thing I would say is, unless you're ready to start the next Facebook or something, if you have that type of idea.
Well, and also then call me because I might be interested in investing. So.
Yeah, I think that's, good advice. And obviously for, as you said, Marie, kind of it fluctuates between industries and, what companies are looking for, in hiring. And kind of, in our last, we have about 8 minutes left. But so thinking about this, we've had a couple of questions, from college students, so what advice do you have for college students or people entering the workforce / making a shift in their career? So what advice do you have for these people who are, looking to make a shift or looking for internships or employment in the career field of their choice, in this ever-changing, fluid employment environment?
And is that kind of related to how to stand out that you were asking, how to stand out when as you're?
Yeah.
I have a few tips for that. I'd say a couple tips on like your resume and maybe one tip on interviewing. So with resumes, my first tip is always don't let your resume be too long. So I don't know if it's just a company like Coke or if it's other companies too, but when I post a position, I can get 100 resumes, you know, pretty quickly, and sometimes even multiple hundreds. And so as I'm trying to figure out a way to get through all those resumes to find good candidates, I'd say a good guideline is maybe no more than 2, maybe 3 pages in a resume. And if you're fresh out of college, maybe even a 1-page resume. So that's one tip, is to try to keep the resume not too long. And another tip for a resume is what I call is keywords. So if you have enough time to, you know, a lot of times you use the same resume over and over for all the different positions you're applying for. But if you have time to cater your resume to each position, or if you have 1 or 2 particular positions you're seeking that you are really, really excited about, take the time to read through that job description, highlight keywords in that job description that resonate with you or that directly apply to your experience, and then make sure those keywords show up in your resume as well. Because a lot of times what I do when I have 100 resumes to look through is I scan through looking for those keywords that match the job description that I'm trying to hire for. And that helps me to narrow down the resumes that I'll focus on. So that's 2 tips on trying to stand out on the resumes. And for interviews, one tip I always tell people to stand out in the interviews is have stories prepared in the back of your mind as opposed to adjectives. An example is, don't go into an interview, if you want to say that you're a quick learner, don't just say you're a quick learner, but actually tell a story that gives an example illustrating when you learn something quickly. And with the interviewers, those stories tend to stick in their minds better than just the adjectives of saying I'm a quick learner. And so that'll help you stand out from other interviewees as well. So those are some tips from me on that.
I would put my 2 tips. The first one would be, you know, identify and exercise your comparative advantages. Don't homogenize yourself. Let me give you an example from a student. His family migrated from Iran in 1989 and settled in the United States. And he's very interested in criminal law and criminal prosecution. But the advice he was getting was to focus on your sort of standard street crime cases. And he wasn't getting advice about the export controls, the trade sanctions that I mentioned earlier. And I said, you know, there are many law students who can do your standard homicide, drug cases, but white collar crimes, not so many. And then he told me he was a chemistry major. So he's also good at intellectual property misappropriation. And that wasn't coming through on his resume. He was homogenizing himself or normalizing himself. And the second, think about what's special about you and make sure that comes out on your resume. And the second, I would call sort of positive idiosyncrasies. And here's what I mean by that. One student came in my office and said, here's the resume I'd like you to take a look at. And I said, well, tell me a little more about yourself. What'd you do before law school? He said, well, I played in the Baltimore Symphony, and it wasn't on the resume. Mm-hmm. And you've been told to take it off. Likewise, I've had other students who spent 6 years living in Russia and teaching Russian, and that wasn't on their resume. These are the stories that you tell in interviews that will make you unique. Even if it's not directly related to the job itself, it makes you a fascinating person, the kind of colleague that you would want to Zoom with if you can't be with in person. So comparative advantages and positive idiosyncrasies.
Well, I think that's exactly right, Raj. And I mean, now more than ever, thank goodness, employers are really focused on diversity, right? And so figure out what makes you diverse. And we are all diverse in some way. Diverse just really means different, right? From the other, maybe the other people in the room or in the group. And so figure out what your thing is and make sure that you share that, because that's what employers are looking for. Long gone are the days of, hiring, your ex-college buddies and that sort of thing. And my advice, COVID or not COVID world, is to always be your most authentic self, because you have to spend at a minimum 40 hours a week doing this particular job with these people. And I would always encourage people to be their most authentic selves, because that's what's going to lead them to the best fit. And if you have to kind of be something else to get the job, it's probably not going to be the right fit, or it won't be sustainable. So stay authentic too.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. I echo that sentiment. I think a couple of things that I'll say. So Demetrius gave really good insight as far as resumes, and I'll touch more on once you've gotten that interview. And I think that where being your authentic self is just the number one thing. So there might not be more to say other than that. But a couple big things for me is research the company beforehand. It takes 5 minutes to learn a little bit about a company, and it helps so much with the type of answers that you can give to a question. I can't even tell you how many people give me the generic answer when I ask why they were attracted to this position. And that's completely a turnoff, regardless of anything else. And then, yeah, I think, just to echo and expand a little bit on that, be yourself, is like when an employer gives you an interview, they're already trusting that you have the skill set for that job. They've sifted through, like Demetrius said, 100+ different resumes, looked for the keywords. You've done a good enough job to distinguish yourself that you are fit in a lot of ways. Now it's to prove that you are the right person for this environment. And the only way to do that is to be yourself. Just as much as organizations are looking for that right cultural fit to make their company grow, to put the right people in the right positions, you need to make sure that you're putting yourself in the right position too. And it's so much easier to put yourself in the right position if you're authentic from the start. So I don't know if that's any new tidbit, but at least it's just echoing what everyone else has said. And then finally, just send thank you notes. It may seem like something that everyone does, but you'd be surprised at how few people do. So when you're done, regardless if you've enjoyed that interview or not, and you want to move forward, send a thank you note. You're not burning a bridge at a minimum. You're maybe gaining a connection, and most likely you're furthering your chance of employment.
I'd echo George's comment about researching the company. One of the questions that we usually ask in most interviews at Coca-Cola is, what's your favorite Coca-Cola product? And, we have over, 200, 300 brands. And so if you can answer that with one of our maybe lesser known brands, that shows that we know that you've researched the company and you know our company.
And I think we're out of time, Leah, but I would just say, I think COVID has made this need to be really intentional about everything that you do. And you have to have a lot of intentionality around things. So when you're thinking about networking, when you're thinking about applying for jobs, when you're thinking about trying to stand out, there's more work now in this, virtual environment. And, take the time to do that work and be really intentional about what's on your resume, what you ask, questions to an employer, and how you network. Because I think it will stand out and it'll get noticed.
Well, you guys have had really wonderful, advice and feedback, and we've had a lot of, thank yous and people saying that they're proud to be, alums with you. So I want to say thank you to our panelists, Demetrius, George, Marie, and Raj. And thank you to everyone who has joined us this evening. To our panelists, Susan Zarwell has invited you guys to reach out to her. She'd love to hear from you on, the impact of a particular college, if it has any impact on your hiring process. I'll be happy to connect you guys. And likewise to our attendees, if we didn't get to your questions, or if you would like to connect further with any one of our panelists, I know that they would be happy to speak with you and answer any additional questions you might have. As well as I invite anyone to submit any thoughts on future webinars and events such as this, if you want to go specific for your industry or for one of the ones that we included this evening. Your Alumni Association is looking to continue to provide really wonderful opportunities such as this evening. So thank you again to everyone for joining us. It's been lovely to share this evening with you, and very, very big thanks to our panelists again. It's been immensely rewarding to hear what you guys have to say, both for your industries, on your experiences, and what the future of work looks like for us, even amidst a global pandemic and outside of that too. So thank you again. And for anyone, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Easy email, alumni@usmk12.org. And I'll be happy to connect you and with any of our panelists and anything else that I can help with. So thanks again. And you guys all have a really lovely evening.
All right. Thank you, Leah.
Thank you.